Hello ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Jim Makes a Cartoon. I'm Jim and I'm making a cartoon. In this week's episode, I'm using Anime Studio to work on the latest episode of Dictator Cat. Check it out by clicking the links in the upper right corner, as well as in the video description. If you're a regular follower of this blog, then you know that last week we talked a little bit about time management and how I'm gonna try to still stick to the monthly schedule. I'm still taking suggestions as to what kind of content you'd like to see here, so that I can focus my efforts a little bit better. In the meantime, the next cartoon I'm working on is going to be a little bit of a deviation. The last episode actually had an alternate ending that I didn't have the time to work into it. Would have made the whole cartoon about 15 to 20 seconds longer. Although alternate ending might not be the right phrase for it, perhaps the best descriptor would be post-credits scene. So that's what my next cartoon is going to be. It's going to be the original post-credits ending that I wanted to put on the last episode of Dictator Cat. I'm the kind of person who over the years has learned to discard ideas if they're not doable under certain circumstances. If I feel like a joke just isn't hitting quite right, or isn't really necessary to the progression of the story, or just can't be done in the period of time I have, I'll throw it away. It's a sacrifice you have to make if you want to produce anything creative in a small time period. But as I started brainstorming ideas for the next episode of the series, I honestly kept coming back to that ending scene, and I really feel like it's a funny enough gag that it merits production. So while the next cartoon is going to be kind of short, I hope you enjoyed. It's really going to be, like I said, kind of an addendum to the previous episode of Dictator Cat. And because it's going to be relatively short, it'll give me a little more time to work on fixing some issues with the character models that I use, as well as do a little bit more planning around the holiday season. Now, I know it's a little bit early generally to be thinking about the holidays, but when you're producing cartoons, you actually need to think about this stuff way ahead of time. So while I've got some general ideas of what I want to do from October through December, I really need to flesh these out, especially because I love holiday content so much in general. Alright, so on to today's blogging topic. I was having a little bit of trouble thinking about what I wanted to talk about this week. So I did the exact opposite of what I should probably do when I want to be productive, and that's browse around Reddit. Now, to be fair, you can sometimes get inspiration for something to talk about from the various stories that are posted there, and I found a story in the Offbeat community, that being a subreddit where people share kind of weird and odd news stories. This particular story is entitled "Armed Men in Body Armor at Walmart Tell Police They Were Preparing for Doomsday." It's basically about these guys who all had automatic and semi-automatic weapons, as well as one guy fully clad in body armor driving into a Walmart parking lot to show each other their new equipment. Unsurprisingly, the police were called in this situation, as it's pretty unusual to see people in fully automatic weapons in full body armor in a Walmart parking lot, and when questioned by police, one of the two men involved said he had the gear so, and I quote, "should the end of days occur or there should be an Armageddon type situation." Now, first of all, the phrase Armageddon type situation is possibly the most hilarious descriptor of anything I have ever heard. Like, you'd think if you'd gone all the way to buy full body tactical armor and automatic weapons to prepare for the end of the world, you'd whole hog commit to saying that you're preparing for Armageddon. But no, this guy's a little bit wishy-washy apparently, because he's preparing for an Armageddon type situation. Now, I don't want to spend the next few minutes just making fun of this guy. Maybe he suffers from mental illness or something like that. Apparently he has a 6-month-old child, and of course you've got to worry about what kind of environment that child's going to be raised in. But regardless, this got me thinking, why, as a species, are we so fixated on the end of the world? Now, I'm not going to deny that there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world these days. We've got wars breaking out, terrorist attacks, the huge amount of tension about the upcoming presidential election in the US, where everyone's talking about who ultimately is going to have access to the nuclear launch codes. But honestly, the end of the world fear isn't new. We've been predicting the end of the world at least since the 1st century, if not before that. I did a kind of lazy Google search and wound up on the Rational Wiki, where they list 68 instances of end of the world prophecy prophecies in the 20th century alone. So while maybe we want to blame the media for bombarding us with negative imagery of worldwide events, or the constant access we now have to that imagery due to the 24-hour news cycle, it's very clear that this whole end-of-the-world paranoia is not a new thing. We're just a lot more aware of it. So this cursory research led me a little bit deeper, and I started reading up on different end-of-the-world predictions. And one of the things I noticed was consistent about different alleged prophets was that if they ever predicted a specific date for the end times, once that date came and went, one of two things would typically happen. One would be that the date would be revised, or number two, they would revise what their prediction actually meant. One of the most recent examples is Harold Camping. Now you may recognize that name a little bit because he was the guy who predicted that the Earth would end on May 21st, 2011. And famously, multiple members of his church quit their jobs and gave away all their possessions because, hey, the world was ending. Why bother hanging on to that stuff? Just enjoy your last few days. So May 21st rolled around and nothing happened. So he actually did both of the things I mentioned earlier. First, he revised his initial prediction, stating that May 21st was actually a spiritual judgment and that a physical destruction of Earth would take place in October. You see the same kind of thinking with adherence to the Mayan 2012 apocalypse scenario. They tend to revise what they said would be a cataclysmic event, instead saying that it was in fact the start of a series of cataclysmic events which would eventually lead to the end of the world. There's even a YouTube channel called The End Times Prophecies, which predicted the world should have ended on July 29th. When that didn't happen, almost immediately, all of their videos were retitled to indicate that the end of the world will in fact happen on October 31st, which led me to my conclusion is that end of the world scenarios, conspiracy theories, all that kind of stuff is entirely based on ego. It's never been about saving the world. It's never been about guiding your followers to the light. It's never been about warning people against an oppressive government. It's entirely about looking out at the world and being able to think to yourself, the rest of you are all ignorant. I know the secret truth. I'm smarter than everyone else here. You should all follow what I have to say. And if you don't agree with me, you're either part of the ignorant populace or you're part of the big cover-up. And believe me, I've gotten into arguments with people about this sort of thing. Logic doesn't work, facts don't work, even emotional appeals don't work. In the world of a doomsday prophet or conspiracy theorist, everything's really about them. With that said, the Harold Camping story actually has a bit of a bittersweet ending, at least for Harold himself. He later did a private interview where he kind of went back to what the Bible actually says about the end of the world, which is that nobody can actually know that date. He even went on to call himself sinful for trying to create that prediction, and admitted that his critics were right. So, in the end, Harold Camping may have been the exception that proved the rule. He let his ego get the best of him, and he actually realized it in the end. But tell me what you think about this. Do you think there's another reason why we as a people try to latch on to doomsday prophecies and conspiracy theories about them? Is there something more to it that I'm not seeing here? Let me know about it in the comments section, and just like last week, let me know if you have ideas that you want to talk about in future blogs or even subjects for future cartoons. If I feel that's something that fits either series, I'll include your comment in the next video. As always, please remember to like and definitely share this video and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And until I finally think of a new sign-off, remember to stay hydrated. I'll see all of you wonderful people next Friday.